what is getting encouraged, what is getting called out positively. Those are the cues, those are the little pats on the back that people then align themselves to moving in that direction. So one is innovation, the other is excellence. And excellence is also a lot about execution. So everything is not about new, a lot of what we do. So I must say that a lot of people, they think of a company like Titan and, they look at the lovely emotional ads or they look at the beautiful watches. So they actually see, and they should see only that as consumers, what I call the art. But there is a huge amount of science that goes in making that art visible to consumers. The big game changing that has happened in my professional life is when I have imagined or visualized myself in a role which was then not currently mine, and made the mental leap saying, I can do this.
Hey listeners, joining me today is the Chief Executive Officer of Watches and Wearables Division at the Titan Company Limited, Suparna Mitra. She is our special guest on this episode of Insights from the World of Titan. Suparna and I discussed how does a CEO wade through the crisis that's underway and how is she coping with the situation? What's a typical life in the day of a CEO? What have been the key learnings over the last 15 months? Titan is synonymous with trust and excellence and an excellent brand recall. How does one nurture ideation and creativity as a way of life? And finally, what's the message for the masses from the CEO? And boy, wasn't it profound. Tune in as I speak to Suparna Mitra. Suparna, so glad that you're able to join us today.
My pleasure. I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you. So we are in these unprecedented times, Suparna. I think nobody could have anticipated the times that we are in. And as such, the role of a CEO was complicated. Now, throw in a COVID into this whole mix, it becomes even more complicated. How are you managing things as a CEO to balance between business imperatives, your employees, stakeholders, and this faceless challenge called as the pandemic?
These are very challenging times. And I think there is also this big difference between COVID-1, which has happened in 2020, and COVID-2, which is happening in 2021. I think COVID-1 was in some ways like a rehearsal or like a trailer, but we didn't really know the real impact. Yes, there was a big economic impact because of the strict national lockdown, but the human loss that we are seeing now is unprecedented. And I don't think there is anybody I have met in the last 1 month who has not been touched by the pandemic. I think in 2020, there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, there is a pandemic, but it's happening somewhere. Somebody is getting impacted. You have to think and then come to, people who had fallen ill. But today it is something that is really pervaded, and the tragic loss of lives is also something that is given an overall pervading sense of, just distress and anxiety. So sometimes the way that it's not about balancing so many things, it's about making a choice. At any point, you make a choice about what is important, and that is then the paramount imperative, and everything else needs to be managed. So I'll give you an example. In Q1 of last year, there was a very big economic challenge because we simply didn't have sales for almost 6 to 7 weeks. And the imperative then was that how do we build back demand and how do we get consumers back? How do we ensure them of the safety of our stores and all of that? By Q3, which was October, November, December, the mood had lifted, everyone was in a festive mood, and then the imperative had changed to how do we actually, help consumers celebrate, and it was about new products, it was about what's new, etc., etc. There was also a period when we were, doing a lot of innovations, like we did something called Titan Pay, which is a watch that does contactless payment. So, you're thinking like that. Quarter 4 was when we said that, we're almost back to normal, business is back to normal. And then the imperative, what we were really doing was planning for this financial year and how we would really get into a growth mode. And 2 weeks into this quarter now, we are facing such a big human crisis in the country that honestly, we've just left the business imperative saying, when business comes, we'll do it. Right now, we have actually, for example, literally stopped all marketing, all outbound calling on our call centers. This is not the time for all of that. This is the time to participate and in the large efforts in getting back the healthcare system to manage the unprecedented demand on it. And so a lot of work is going on in terms of a lot of people on their own, in their personal capacity, the company as in its capacity, the company as part of the Tata Group. I think they're all focused on helping each other. A lot of our employees have suffered from the this terrible illness. And it's not just that you have an illness and the next, after 2 weeks, you're fine. We find that people are finding it difficult. There is a lot of residual fatigue and all of that. Unfortunately, some lives have been lost and there is that tremendous community grief. And I think as a CEO, it is important to address it. It's important to acknowledge it. Like yesterday, we had monthly review and normally we go through our plans and all that. But this time we just took time to acknowledge, what has happened and to pay tribute to some of our colleagues who had lost their lives and to really share what we are going through. So there were people who suffered from COVID who shared what they had gone through. They gave tips on, how they managed and how they would recommend to others. There were people who were talking about simple things like don't get isolated, don't look at social media too much. Some of it is known, but when you hear it from your colleagues and you hear the stories behind, it just helps in that assimilation of what has gone on. So I think right now as a CEO, it is a time to really acknowledge, validate people's experiences, share that whole feeling, but also give the ray of hope. This too shall pass. There will be a time when it will be better. And until such time, how can we help?
Wonderful. I think it kind of speaks volumes of the Tata Group of companies, and this is business worldwide is shifting the focus on what is important in the current scheme of things, which is people.
Yeah, totally. And I just like to add, it's not just people who are our employees. We look at the people ecosystem from those of our partners, our franchisees, our vendors, our distributors. There are these vaccination programs, then there is insurance programs. So it's really looking out at the larger family of people who work in Titan and as much as possible ensuring their well-being in these really, really difficult times.
So it might be tough on you as well, kind of orchestrating all of these things. So just walk us through what a typical day in the life of Suparna is like.
So right now, Bangalore is in a lockdown and it is obviously meetings and also, I have to do some of the housework because we don't have the help in and preparing meals and looking after the kids and all. But actually, I do feel interestingly, and this is a difference, one more difference from 2020 COVID-1 to COVID-2, is this time, for example, you don't hear of those stories of Dalgona coffee and everyone is, baking and everybody had, become like Coke. And I think people are just coping. And one of the things that I'm practicing myself and I have told my teams also is take rest, take enough time. It is emotionally exhausting to hear so much bad news. And it's not even like you are going in search of the bad news. Even if you decide not to read the day's papers, bad news is coming.
It's just coming at you.
It's coming at you. You cannot, you shy away. You cannot turn a deaf ear neighbors, friends, parents, and extended relatives. It is a hard time. We need to take care of ourselves. So I do try to put in some amount of things that I believe works for me for self-care. That may not work for everybody. I think for some people, it's a lot about exercise. I do, put in half an hour of walking, but I think it's for me some amount of meditation, some amount of reading. I read a lot. I actually don't watch TV. I think that is also a form of self-care. I am on social media, especially on Twitter. And, it is important to know what's going on without getting engulfed in it. So I think it's a route for this year. For example, I don't have back-to-back meetings. I take time out. I do have a 1.5 hour lunch break, and I sit down and I have my meal on the table. It's not like you have to have the meal with your laptop on. I just try to avoid it. I space myself out. I give time to myself in the evening, just get centered and grounded again. Because we're in the middle of the crisis, we're not realizing the long-term impact of this trauma that we are all going through. I'm not even talking about people who've lost their loved ones. That is at some other level of grief. I'm just talking about people who have had COVID or seen it close by or in their family. It's not easy. So I believe in really taking care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, I cannot even begin to take care of others.
Now, for all the listeners out there, particularly the working professionals, this is some sage advice coming from a practicing CEO. So listen to it. So, Suparna, on the same note, we did touch upon how 2021 COVID is a lot different from the 2020 COVID. What has been your own personal learnings in this last 12 months?
I think one of the things that we've realized is that things don't go as per plan. We made so many plans and so many scenarios, and it just keeps changing. It keeps shifting. So one big learning is be agile, be nimble, be humble. Things will change. You will have to change according to it. You can't get stuck and say, no, this is what I want, because that's not going to happen. And listen, learn, see what is going on. See, we are in a consumer facing company, so we need to have very strong consumer insights. And consumers, say, for example, from 2010 to 2019, consumers were thinking in a particular way. Say 10 years. And in the last 1 year, they've thought in multiple different ways, and all different at different points in time. So to be attuned to consumer behavior and where they are, what they're thinking, what are they afraid of, what are they happy about, to really get into that is important for, like I said, consumer companies like us, because finally, everything that we sell, watches, wearables, the company sells jewelry or eyewear or perfumes or accessories. It all depends on the consumer state of mind. So one of the big learnings has been that many things will change, including this factor of consumer state of mind, which is the main determinant of consumer demand. And you have to be constantly observing, listening, both officially, unofficially, informally, formally, digitally, in real life, and keep adjusting the plans and then execute them. So much shorter planning cycles, then plan, execute, look at what's happening, and then replan. So regroup, constantly get into a huddle every week, 2 weeks, and just go through what did we want, what happened, what did we plan for, what do we learn from it, and then, do the next iteration.
So agility and responsiveness is the name of the game.
Absolutely. And also that point about observing and listening and really going a little deep into exactly what is happening.
So that's a wonderful segue into the specific sector that you are in charge of, right? It's a very vibrant sector. You are overseeing watches and wearables. Give us a peep into what is the future trends of this industry, specifically wearables.
So yeah, we've been a watches company for about 34 years now, and we are the number one company. We are the market leader with more than almost 50% market share by value. And every single international watch brand has come into this country and yet we have maintained and even grown in market share. So there is a very, very strong capability and understanding on the watches side. And that's across the value chain from, like I said, consumer insighting, design, manufacturing, and also the sales, retailing, after sales service, marketing, brand building, the whole game, right? There are a lot of new things that are happening in watches. And unlike popular belief, which seems like who wears a watch anymore, actually watches is a growing category and has been growing for the last 3 to 4 years. It is on the back of innovation. It is on the back of giving consumers a reason to buy. Watches has traditionally been about gifting as well as self-purchase. Self-purchase is often about self-expression. Sometimes it's about status. Gifting, on the other hand, is always about expression of love and gifting both in the intimate circle of the family as well as, watches make very nice corporate gifts and employee gifts and all of that. So all of that is very much there. And we are very bullish about watches as a whole, as a category. We've done some amazing work. For example, in February, we launched the slim mechanical watch from Titan Edge, and it is priced at 1.95 lakh rupees. And, it's like a skeptic would be, who would buy a Titan watch at almost 2 lakhs? Well, lots of people have. And we are actually almost 50% sold out in a couple of months. And then, of course, the pandemic has hit. So because it is a beautiful product, it is really an epitome of the master craftsmanship and technical excellence of horology, of watchmaking that is there in the product. So I think the excitement of the category is for us to inject. It would be a very lazy argument saying that the category is not growing. The category is growing, and the category is growing because all the players, including us, are doing interesting things to keep it growing. Now coming to wearables. Now, the reason, it is like the wrist. What's the connection between watches and wearables? It's about the wrist, right? Having said that, we didn't have any of this capability, and we started our journey in 2016. So it's been about 5 years. And initially, we took a lot of help from other technology majors. In fact, our first smartwatch, Titan Juxt, was launched in collaboration with HP. Then we had another watch called Titan Juxt Pro, which was developed in collaboration with Intel. And then we've also worked with a bunch of startups. So it's like, we've come a long way. We've launched products on various use cases. So the use case of fitness, of course, is the largest, most well-established use case. Also the use cases of women's safety and some others. So we've done a lot of different products. And last year in Jan 2020, we did the acqui-hire of a Hyderabad-based startup called Hug Innovations. And, that entire team came in and is now part of Titan, of the tech team for our wearables side of the business. So we have acquired the capability. We have acquired the experience. We have extremely ambitious plans. This is a buzzing sector. Even during COVID, this did not dip really. It actually just, kind of maintained where everything else dipped hugely. So it's a very exciting field, and we are very committed to investing whatever it takes to be a big player and a dominant player in this too, like in watches for India.
And this sector is also where you see a lot of generational shifts in the consumer behavior segment, right? You have multiple generations. How easy or hard it is as a leader for you to keep an eye on the ball and direct your team and navigate the organization to manage these various generational shifts?
Technology, it moves really fast, and we see this across all brands. There are two tracks. That one is what is currently going on, and at the same time, there is an R&D track, which is probably something that is going to be launched a year later. So, I'll give you the example of Fast Track Reflex. We first launched Fast Track Reflex in 2018. And that time we called it Reflex, and then we launched Reflex 2, then we relaunched Reflex Beat, which was with the HRM, with the heart rate monitor. We launched something called Reflex Wave, which was a smart band with gesture technology, and it was one of the slimmest with gesture technology. And recently, in February, we launched Reflex 3.0. Reflex 3.0 was interesting because the whole app and the ecosystem is ours. This is what our Hyderabad acquisition, that team that we acquired, they have worked on for the last year. And right now we are working. I mean, I just came out of a review where we were reviewing what's going to come in the next 6 months, what's going to come in the next year. And the difficulty is that everything, it's a moving target, right? So what we think is going to come in 6 months, but in 6 months, some other feature can become a must have. And of course, part of it is COVID related, because right now, a lot of smartwatches are like SpO2 temperature. They are becoming features that consumers are asking for. Forget about how accurate it is. People just want it on that smartwatch. So it's complex. There is the device, there is the app and the ecosystem. How do we keep consumers engaged? So you have to work on many tracks at the same time, today's as well as, the medium term and the long term.
So work on multiple things at the same time, also factor in what the market dynamics. And again, Titan has been synonymous with pursuing excellence. And you did touch upon innovation playing a large part in the variables section. So as CEO of the organization, how do you go about getting the team to rally around these two fundamental blocks around it, pursuing excellence and innovation?
I think, these are cultural things, and some of it is just inherited. It's all embedded in the DNA, and you have to go back to past leaders and what they gave emphasis. Finally, people do what they feel gets rewarded, what is recognized, what is encouraged. And, Titan's first managing director, Mr. Xerxes Desai, and I've had the unique privilege of working with him for a while. He had such an eye for detail, such an eye for design. And many of us, and I mean, that time I was very young, we just learned by observation, by osmosis. And then you kind of do the same thing to other people. So, in a meeting, and you're looking at product, you're looking at innovation, you're looking at what are the new products or the new projects that we're working on. The cues of what is important. Is maintaining status quo important, or is, newness and innovation important? And that is something that is a constant process. See, there are a lot of formal processes of acknowledging innovation. We have internal, reward and recognition programs, some of which are great institutions. People like why for winning those. And that's also because the quality of those winners is high, and people know that the judging and the evaluation process is totally unbiased, and therefore it's worth really trying hard and vying for it. And then it's also about, like I said, what gets talked about, whether it's the MD who's putting a cascade or the CEO, what is getting encouraged, what is getting called out positively. Those are the cues, those are the little pats on the back that people then align themselves to moving in that direction. So one is innovation, the other is excellence. And excellence is also a lot about execution. So everything is not about new, a lot of what we do. So I must say that a lot of people, they think of a company like Titan and, they look at the lovely emotional ads, or they look at the beautiful watches. So they actually see, and they should see only that as consumers, what I call the art. But there is a huge amount of science that goes in making that art visible to consumers. So the science of retailing, the science of merchandising, the science of production, there's all the functions, even functions like marketing. There is a lot of science. So the science rightfully should be invisible and it should all look magical, but there is a lot of science, and excellence and in the science part of it, in the process part of it, is something that needs to be reviewed, needs to be again encouraged, and some of it needs to be automated and systemized so that you take out human intervention or the lack of it from it. But it is always about how deep does this go? Does it require a leader to change, or is it something that even if the leader were to disappear for 1 month or 6 months, nothing would change? They would still go on that path, because now it's, like I said, in their DNA.
Right. So make it part of the culture, make it part of the DNA so that it becomes sustained kind of a organization ethos.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll move on to the next round. This is the CEO rapid fire round, exclusively for you, Suparna. I'll ask you a few pointed questions as how you deal these things as a CEO and expect a sharp answer.
Oh my God, too much pressure, but I'll try.
No pressure. So where would Suparna go when the chips are down?
Inside me. I would reflect inside me. I think I am my own safe space at home with me, with myself.
How do you compartmentalize your energy on any given day?
Energy is, unlike time, I feel energy is not finite. I'm not saying it's infinite, but energy can be regenerated. So no matter which way you look at it, you only have 24 hours. But if you do things that you really love and that you believe in, then energy is infinite. Even if you're physically tired, you will continue to be able to, go on. You do need times and spaces where you refuel your energy, but energy is something that is regenerative.
What has been your game changer moments?
There is no one moment, but I think the game keeps changing because it changes in your mind first, and then it changes in reality. The big game changing that has happened in my professional life is when 2 or 3 times when I have imagined or visualized myself in a role which was then not currently mine, and made the mental leap saying, I can do this. And I may not know all of it, but I will learn and I can do it. And that is when, you move to the next gear. So it's literally like in a car, right? You are in gear, first gear. You have to make the switch to go from first gear to second gear, and then everything will follow. Of course, it requires energy, it requires dedication, it requires hard work, it requires a lot of collaboration, it requires a lot of support from other people. But the switch is in my head. So I have to go from first gear to second gear to third gear, etc., etc.
So part of it, is it visualization?
It is visualization. And the visualization, interestingly, is not always a completely rosy picture. It's also the visualization that this could be a challenge, which actually then makes you think about how am I going to overcome it proactively, even if the challenge comes or doesn't come, I should be ready for it.
If Suparna were to have a billboard, what message or quote would that billboard have?
Be kind.
Couldn't have been a better message for the times that we are in.
Yeah, I know. But, I feel it's not just about right now. It's very heightened and people are just raw and feeling very much in a distressed state. But I feel a lot of times I meet people who are seemingly perfectly happy. But I realize when I speak to them that everyone has a story. Everyone has a backstory. Everyone has gone through challenges. Everyone has had those struggles. And I just feel that most people, almost all people, are fascinating with how they have dealt with all these challenges in life. They've risen, they've overcome, they've made something out of their lives. They've made happy families. They've made other people happy. They've been, everybody has such nuances in their personality. Most often, most of it is kept hidden. And once you are able to connect with someone and all of those things come out, it's fascinating. So be kind is simply that if you're kind, you are actually connecting with that other person at a deeper level.
Nice. So Suparna, Titan brand has always been synonymous with excellent brand recall and thoughtful campaigns. Be it the Women's Day campaign that we recently had, or even the second half of last year, Let's Go India, to get the small and medium enterprises to come back on their knees. How do you nurture ideation and creativity in organizations? And this can be a cue to all the listeners out here for them to take back in their respective organizations as well. Is how to create this whole platform of ideation and creativity that you consistently come up with great brand campaigns.
It's an interesting question. I think a part of it is the people who work, right? A lot of it is the people who work. And I think it works in a kind of in a circular way because we are known for very sensitive and thoughtful advertising. People who come to Titan and they want to work on things like that. So you attract like to like, right? We attract people or we nurture people. There have been a lot of people who work on brand campaigns in Titan who have joined, say, as management trainees, and they have kind of grown in the system. They've learned from their bosses or super bosses, etc. So, like I said, a lot of it is an overall culture. But I do think there is one point here, which is there are two actually. One is freedom to do new things and to constantly experiment. And in the digital world, this is a very good thing because, in those days, 15 years back when I was a brand manager, you wanted to do something really innovative or thought provoking or thoughtful in terms of brand campaign, it would be a bet, right? You'd have to make a TV commercial and it's a lot of money. And so, you would try to be quote unquote de-risk it and make it safe. But today with digital, I think the level of experimentations, what's the worst that can happen is that some amount of money will go, but it just gives more wings for people to fly with. So one is the freedom bit. And I think in Titan, there has always been a culture of that. I've been, in marketing for many years, and I have always got it from my bosses and super bosses. Today, I'm in a position where I encourage my people, whether they're brand managers, marketing managers, to brainstorm, to come up with new ideas and to really capture the zeitgeist of the times, to say, this is exactly what people are feeling right now, and then to translate it. So Let's Get India Ticking is actually a very good example because at that point, if you remember 2020 COVID, the tragedy was not so that there were so many COVID patients and hospitals were overcrowded or there was no oxygen. The tragedy was that small and medium enterprises had just shut down and people were out of work and they had trudged back home and miles and miles and kilometers. And honestly, there was an economic problem. They didn't have money. And many of us who are privileged to be upper middle class, upper class, or even middle class citizens, we were like not realizing that we needed to patronize some of these smaller enterprises for them to kickstart. And this idea had been something that many of us in the office at that point, we were feeling that we need to, buy the flowers that we used to buy from the florist, because the flowers are going to make me happy, but the flowers are actually going to keep that person's kitchen alive. So, and why should we deprive ourselves of these small pleasures if it's going to give employment and money to all these people? So that was the starting point of that. And of course, the execution was wonderful. And we actually went and met with lots of different companies and reached out to many, many CEOs, and many people supported our campaign and they supported it in social media, etc. So it was a fantastic effort. Was it an expensive thing in terms of money? No. Was it very special as an idea? Absolutely.
Right. I completely endorse that. That really made it both emotional and also a powerful message for everybody out there.
Right. And it was a simple action, right? All you had to do was go to your nearest, whatever you wanted, vegetable man or chai wala or whatever it is, and kickstart the process.
So, Suparna, in closing, this is inspire someone today. What is your message of inspiration to all the listeners out here?
I think this goes back to what I was saying about I feel every single person, there is inspiration inside them. And I get so inspired by so many quote unquote ordinary people. I think ordinary people are actually extraordinary. It's just that we don't peel the onion and we don't get to the nuances of what is it that is special. I think COVID has also taught us that, all these so-called extraordinary people and the big celebrities, and you really wonder, why were we even enamored of them? Who are the real heroes? The nurses, the doctors, these dunzo guys, yeah? I mean, come on, look at them. They do 18, 20 deliveries every day in this COVID environment. The BBMP workers who are cleaning the streets, every morning I see them, the power karmikas. It is heroism. Inspiration is in all of these people. I mean, I'm not naming anybody, but a lot of people name XYZ, big corporate leader or, big inventor, maybe, of course they have done those big things and you can be and we should be inspired by all of them. But I feel that my big learning for in the last 1 year is inspiration is in each person that you meet. And inspiration is something that we have to kind of remove the fog from our eyes and see people for how wonderful they are. Look at the effort that people have made in these last 2-3 weeks, finding oxygen, finding remdesivir. I mean, ordinary people have helped ordinary people. And that is why they're all extraordinary.
Beautiful. Couldn't have summarized it better. Suparna, thank you so much for taking time and sharing these wonderful thoughts with us. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you for listening. And if you like this episode and feel someone can benefit from it, please do share. If you have any feedback or comment, you can leave me a voice message or drop me a quick note at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, stay well and keep inspiring. Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what you listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.